Mystery Secret Searchers, Episode 23, The Militia. I was a soldier in the British military. I had no secrets, curses, dreams, nor fairy. Pursued by Americans, Johnson tunnels in 1812. Sword is lost. We survive in mystery delve. To protect our people, our land, our crown, passageways, ears to dig, sacred marks the ground. Bloody battles lift the curse, years of torment, of death. Friends fallen, was it worth? A curse gone, we can rest. Well, in North Glengarry, we found the house of John McLeod back in the 1800s. Here it is on a piece of property. This is private property, so we were not allowed to go up to the house. We were asking permission to do that for a future episode. His property is up in Lochiel, near Dalkeith in North Glengarry, very close to the cairn of the McLeods. And also, we noticed while we were up there, there is a road called McLeod Road. So we have discovered the farmhouse of John McLeod. Now, John McLeod wasn't just a farmer. He was a farmer in his later years, once he settled on the land. The beginning of his career was in the military, the British military. Now, we learned of the McLeods and John McLeod specifically, and we learned of the tartan and that he was in the military, and he lived from 1809 to 1891. He was a part of the British military. He helped with a lot of the resettlement of the United Empire Loyalists when they were exiled from America. He was friends with other famous military people like Colonel Darby Bergen and Lieutenant Colonel John McDonnell. Now, why were we in need of a military? Well, the Americans, they were having problems with the British. You've probably heard of the Boston Tea Party. The taxes were too high, the form of government they didn't like. So the Americans, they rebelled against Britain. In 1775, the 13 colonies, the beginning of America, they basically began the American Revolution. For a while, they even occupied Montreal and attacking Quebec. They were defeated in those places, but they did win their war of independence with Britain. The Americans didn't stop there, though. The Americans continued to attack Upper and Lower Canada. You have probably heard of the Battle of 1812, or the War of 1812. Many battles. Battles of Lundy Lane, that's down near Niagara Falls, Queenston Heights, Beaver Dams. Laura Secord was a part of that story. Battle of Fort George, the Battle of York, which is now Toronto, the Battle of Frenchtown, Stony Creek, the Thames, Frenchman's Creek, Longwoods, Malcolm Mills, the raid on Gananoque, the siege of Fort Mackinac, the siege of Fort Erie, the capture of Fort Niagara. And also, we have a couple of them close to where John McLeod was living, up in Glengarry. We have the Battle of the Windmill and the Battle of Chrysler's Farm in 1813. What was going on was that the Americans were winning against the British in what is now the United States, but they were not having any luck crossing the St. Lawrence, getting into Canada. A lot of British people who were loyal to Britain in America were evicted. They had to get out. And they came to Upper and Lower Canada. Here they were helped by people like Sir John Johnson. And John McLeod was helping them as well find land in Upper Canada. John Graves Simcoe offered free land for soldiers and for some of these exiled United Empire Loyalists. Lots of settlements were formed along the St. Lawrence. It was basically a fight for democracy. The British Crown had their way of doing things, but the Americans did not like it. They wanted to change the political system. And as a result, there was the War of Independence. The Americans won that war. The British were defeated. But when the Americans came to Canada to try to take on the British here, they had worse luck. They lost these battles. Canada remained Canada. And actually, these events were instrumental in the founding of the Dominion of Canada and the Confederation of Canada, the forming of the country of Canada. So these were very significant events in the history. Now, how does our story with John McLeod kind of tie into all this? Well, it seems like there are suggestions about where the cursed sword of the clan McLeod went. When it was in the hands of John McLeod and Caribou Cameron and Reverend Alexander MacDonald here in Glengarry, the curse seemed to be bad luck for these people. The sword had to be taken away. It had to be hidden. It had to be removed. It had to be protected, perhaps, so the curse would not happen. Well, one of the stories we have here is during an American battle where they came across the St. Lawrence. You can see there's the United States in the far and Canada here in the foreground. During one of these battles, the sword was actually found by an American soldier who apparently used it as a paddle as he paddled away from one of their American defeats. The soldier was seen paddling away across the St. Lawrence on a plank of wood using something like a sword as a paddle. Well, the mystery secret searchers believe that that paddle was probably the Sword of MacLeod. And when it got to America, it cursed them. They could not win any more battles. They won their independence. The British lost when they had the sword. When the sword was in the hands of the Americans, they lost. They couldn't come in. They couldn't attack Canada and win any battles here. The sword's travels really are quite fascinating. Now here's a memorial to Sir John Johnson. He was involved in the military as well. He was posted as someone to help with a land settlement for the United Empire Loyalists, and he was very instrumental in helping the Indian population in Upper and Lower Canada at the time. We'll talk a little bit more about Sir John Johnson in an upcoming episode, but it seems like he was well aware of the sword, and he was one of the United Empire Loyalists that had to flee in exile from America. He came to Canada. And one of the things he did when he got to Upper Canada is he began building secret tunnels. He was worried that the Americans would attack and start taking over the land in Upper Canada, so he wanted to have some kind of a defense. Thanks for watching Mystery Secret Searchers. In the next video, we will show highlights of the War of 1812, done as a reenactment here in Glengarry. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.